Okay, why in God's name are you boys now inspiring the other crew members to run to me in a blind panic? Admiral Cistern demands as he walks into the small side laboratory that the nerd squad had put up. Clips and images from all sorts of cartoons litter the walls with numerous whiteboards filled with a type of madness you'd expect out of the Necronomicon if Cthulhu was a dork. Biblical verses, memes, and demotivators make the room a dizzying shrine to human madness that somehow still follows enough of a course of logic that 100 men can easily keep track of it and translate it all, even via teleconference. The fact that the men had saluted had stopped them from doing whatever it was they were doing. Jin says as he slowly puts down his searing hot branding iron and Vernon lowers his t-shirt sleeve. Why is there a branding about to happen? Please, I want to trust you boys. Make this make sense. There are several styles of Axiom totems. Brands are among them. So we have made our own brand that works to do 3 things. Absorb, contain, and control Axiom power. Basically, it will let us do some even more impressive stunts than what we've been doing so far, Amadi answers. Several of you have actually found ways to rearrange the atomic structure in the atmosphere around you into sold gold bullion, literally crashing economies in front of my eyes. How much more do you want? He asks. Sir, have you had a time to read my report on the Shellcracker or Broken Shell Tournament? I have. I was about to send in my approval when I got a panicked call from Sergeant Florence. Very good, sir. One of the rules of the tournament is that you go in with only your clothing and armor. No weapons, it's raw skill and Axiom use, Vernon says, both of which you possess, soldier, furthermore. You're on your honeymoon. I said I had a guy's night with friends coming up. She accepted that, no question. I see. Now, why do you want to be branded like cattle? Admiral Cistern asks, steering the conversation back to the pertinent topic. Brands can work as an Axiom totem. In particular, we've designed a style of brand that will act as a very powerful totem by working together in groups of 3. Hence the 3-pronged Kutha brand we've slapped together. And what does this brand look like? He asks, wondering just what the soldiers are planning to do to themselves. Jin slaps the nearby whiteboard right over a trinity of symbols arranged in a triangle. A trinity of circles combined, the symbol of infinity, and what looks like a sunburst with a cross inside it. Do they have any meaning, or... They mean nothing in the context of the brand. Culture-wise, they have their own meanings. But they look meaningful, which is the point. Obfuscation is still in play, Vernon explains. So what's the point of all this mess? How does this help you win your little tournament? First step is that the brand will let me absorb a huge amount of Axiom for my use. This will allow me to mimic, if not surpass, the natural affinity that the Apuk have for Axiom. Secondly, I'll be able to hold it within myself safely. This means it will be immediately usable on a scale that hopefully exceeds what they have. Finally, will be control, letting me do the more exotic of our techniques much easier and much faster. Even better is that all these symbols may be human, but they also resemble many different symbols from many different races the galaxy over. It looks like complete gibberish, but it will work as a totem. You're going to that competition to win? I'm going to that competition to flirt with my wife, test out Axiom-resistant armor, get a good look firsthand at Axiom-based combat and how our own developments stack up against it. Finally, I'll be going to put on a show, one for the whole galaxy. Winning isn't important, learning and presentation are. And you get to show off for your wife, Admiral Cistern notes. Sir, that was literally the first point I mentioned. Vernon reminds him, and the Admiral takes a deep breath and gestures for him to continue. Not much more, sir. Once we've got the brand down, it's just practice a bunch of techniques that will both look good and be effective in battle. Zawarudo! Jin half shouts, and Admiral Cistern slowly turns to look at him. Shorthand for a temporal acceleration ability that gives him a few moments where all of reality is basically stopped around him. By stopped, I mean he'll be able to watch a laser beam inch through the air. And how is he to avoid creating massive sonic booms, or ripping his skin off through the wind shear, or even move at all as the atmosphere around him is not moving to let him pass? He asks, and Jin flinches. I'm working on it, sir. My own work into conjuring a storm of fire isn't doing so well either. Vernon admits. At Admiral Cistern's look, he shrugs. The 10 plagues of Egypt, sir. Just make sure you are all taking fastidious notes and have someone nearby to at least call for medical assistance if things go wrong. Admiral Cistern orders them and receives salutes from each of them. Medals and money are replaceable, but I have only a few thousand soldiers to take on an entire galaxy with. You boys are of far greater value. Take care of that resource, understood? Yes, sir. The room sounds out, and he smiles. Good. Now, show me the evidence that this branding business is use the galaxy over, and if you're going to actually do it, for God's sake have medical supplies and staff on hand. I suppose we did get a little ahead of ourselves. Amati notes plainly, and Admiral Cistern nods. Right, slow down, got it, Vernon says before rushing to a nearby table and from under a small pile of loose notes pulls out a thick book in Galactic Standard. Surprisingly, hard copies are still quite popular, more nostalgic than anything, but with the whole galaxy as a market, nostalgia is enough to keep books in print. Which is a relief, he says before holding it out for Admiral Sister. The power of branding is emblazoned across the front. He takes it and opens it to the first of many bookmarks. There's a highlighted paragraph. This modified residue resulting from the branding attunes that portion of the anatomy to Axiom use on an enormous scale. Unlike normal burn scars, the galaxy over an Axiom brand seemingly heals over without a mark until such time as it's utilized as an Axiom-based totem, which causes the marking to glow brightly enough to be revealed through thinner clothing. These markings can be perceived when not in use by those attuned to axiomatic energies and shine like stars. He reads out loud before considering. So this won't even show as proper scars? At first. Best we can tell is that they fade entirely within a week until called upon to channel energy. Or at least, that's the time frame on a Tret, which is the closest genetic cousin we have out here in the stars. The only thing that hasn't been thoroughly tested is what kind of effects Null has on an Axiom brand. Does it simply turn it off for a time? Does it erase it? Does it go boom? Does it burn? We don't know. Jin explains and he nods. Then figure it out. Put a brand on a rat and make sure it's active. Then throw it into some Null and see what happens. He orders and they nod. That'll involve the science boys. You should have involved the science boys from the start. Sir, they scare us. I go from water to blood and blood to acid. They start talking about atomic conversion into chlorine trifluoride and keeping it from igniting with Axiom. When I asked for an explanation of what the hell they were demanding to see, I backed out of the room halfway through the lecture and haven't gone back. And what does chlorine trifluoride do? It sets asbestos and concrete on fire, Vernon says in a haunted tone. Okay, I need to have another talk with the lab boys. That and get them their own private facility well away from anyone else. Thank you, sir, and please put a motor on that as it needs to happen before they turn their attention to azidoazide azide, which is basically the concept of an explosion in chemical form. I understand your concern, though I must ask how you know of this substance. We looked up a list of the most dangerous chemicals humanity has ever synthesized and found our friend chlorine trifluoride. Azidoazide azide is higher on the list, Vernon says, and Admiral Cistern resolves to have that talk with them within the hour. Rope in a saner scientist to go over your notes as well as a fully accredited doctor to observe things. Experimenting with Axiom techniques is one thing. Designing some Axiom-resistant armor is another. But branding yourselves is something in a league all its own. Yes, sir, the nerds say, and he salutes them before walking out with the book on branding. He has no doubt that they've already memorized the contents on top of having multiple copies. He leaves the chatter of the room behind him as he churns his mind to the affairs of the Dauntless. They were reaching the point where they'd have to send a message pod back. They had been out 5 months and were approaching the 6th. That was the point. He would send a message back to Earth, along with whatever evidence could survive. Cruel space in order to convince people of the correct course to take in this situation. He has no delusions as to the fact that things are rather unbelievable. It will take decades, perhaps even centuries, before the people on Earth truly understand what the galaxy outside is like. Sending back some of the men would be best, but choosing whom would be a real struggle. They would have to be people who had made proper contact with the women of the galaxy and understood them to some degree. Then would come the inevitable bickering, lying, political games, and all sorts of nonsense before a second mission was sent out. Hopefully by then they will have cracked cryogenic freezing or some kind of stasis technology to allow the majority of a crew to skip the ride out of cruel space, of which he is going to see what level of progress has been made. He tucks the book under his arm and increases the pace of his march into the more official and supposedly rational researchers on his ship. All right. What's this I've been hearing about chlorine trifluoride and azidoazide, he demands. And there's a stillness as dozens of different men and women in lab coats turn to look at him. Well, don't everyone answer at once, he says after nearly a minute passes without any form of explanation. No answer. Very well then, he states. You with the clipboard? You are to assist and document what the Nerd Squad are doing in relation to the Axiom brands. Ensure that they properly test the brand on a rat with null being introduced upon it and that a medical professional is nearby at all times, he orders, pointing to a nearby scientist. Yes, sir, the previously guilty-looking young woman states, and she puts down the clipboard and rushes out of the room as he cracks his neck and gets ready to dress them all down for introducing even more dangerous compounds and formulae into his ship.